First and foremost, let us be very grateful that we have such a wonderful people that live to our south. And I'm a Californian. We're very proud of our heritage that we share with our brothers and sisters to the south. And America could have people who are or as our neighbors that we didn't like. But I will tell you this much. The people of Mexico are wonderful people. I've spent a lot of time with them as a young person and as I got older as well. Being a surfer, I've spent a lot of time with Mexican surfers down in Baja. And so let us just start with that we should be grateful as a country for having such wonderful neighbors as we have. Having wonderful neighbors and having good friends doesn't mean that there aren't problems, and you have to work at those problems to make sure you maintain a good relationship. And I'm very happy to hear testimony today that indicates that that relationship and that cooperation actually is on the upswing. And I hope to be as supportive as I could of that effort. I'd like to talk about something that you've touched on and ask you, what is drug use in Mexico like? Is there a problem with internal drug use in Mexico?
I don't see anyone else grabbing for the microphone, Congressman, so I will take a crack at that. May I offer one lesson of history, and that is there is no such thing as a country that serves solely as a transit country in the drug trafficking pipeline. Mm-hmm. And the reason is very, very simple. Over the last 30 or 40 years, the trafficking organizations pay their network in product. They do not pay $50,000 to a corrupted customs official. They provide a half kilo of cocaine or of heroin, and that product then must be marketed locally, and in that way a transit nation becomes a consumer nation. Mexico is, in fact, confronting its own drug problem and crisis. It involves methamphetamines, cocaine, and heroin. A big part of our program under the Merida Initiative with the government of Mexico is drug demand reduction in terms of supporting an education program in schools and among youth, treatment and rehabilitation centers, particularly in cities that are vulnerable to social unrest and poverty.
Let me ask you this. Do they imprison drug users in Mexico?
I'll have to double check in terms of the specific state of federal Mexican law. There are, of course, 32 states in Mexico, as in the United States, and each state has its own legal code. What I do not know at this point is whether mere possession or consumption is a criminal offense.
Yeah. Let us note that our drug war has been a total failure in the United States. We have massive drug use after how many years? And that drug use in the United States is one of the things that has had a negative impact on our neighbor, on our good neighbors who we like. And I think that there's a tendency among too many Americans to blame Mexico for our problem of consumption when actually it's the other way around. And I have talked with former President Vicente Fox in Mexico, and he is suggesting that perhaps we should try a revolutionary approach, which is bringing down the price of drugs by legalizing it and by treating those people who use drugs as people who need our help rather than people who need to be imprisoned.
I agree with you, Congressman, that drugs in the United States and everywhere else in the world is a public health issue, that it is not just a criminal justice issue.
So let me just say this. The best thing that we could do for Mexico would be to lower the price of drugs so the cartels then wouldn't have so much income to create a power dynamic in Mexico that's negative to that country. Isn't that correct?
I would want to be very careful not to support a policy or a strategy whose effect would be to increase the number of users and consumers of dangerous products.
Agreed.
I understand what you're saying. My only response is the devil's in the details. We have to make sure that as we proceed, we're not producing a worse outcome than we're
Let me do with a note on that, and I understand that argument, but I would just suggest that I haven't seen a lot of evidence that indicates that legalization of drugs and treating it as a personal problem that someone would have rather than a criminal problem, I haven't seen where that would increase the use of drugs in our society or in Mexico. I've come to the conclusion that people can get a hold of drugs in our society no matter what. There's nothing stopping them, and that legalizing it wouldn't mean more people would be using it. It's just that there would be, the drug cartels would be cut totally out of the equation, and thus helping Mexico. With that thought, thank you very much.